Coming up on the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast, the latest on the $700 million Hoosier Gateway in Chicago. Our Culture Matters segment spotlights Moser Consulting. The INnovators with Dr. K features new forklift tech. Could Indiana be a hub for orange corn? A new effort honors a late Butler basketball star. And a deep dive into Eli Lilly's latest tax abatement request. Welcome to the Inside Indiana Business Television podcast. I'm Andy Ober. The president of the Northwest Indiana Regional Development Authority says the South Shore Line Westlake Corridor project will create a crucial Hoosier Gateway in Chicago. The more than $700 million project has taken a step toward hundreds of millions of dollars in federal funding. CEO Bill Hanna joined Inside Indiana Business host Gary Dick with an update.
Inside Indiana Business, I'm Gary Dick. Well, big news this week in Northwest Indiana. The Federal Transit Administration giving the South Shore Line Westlake Corridor project a positive rating. Now, that means it's a step closer to perhaps $440 million in federal funding. The 8-mile rail extension between Dyer and Hammond viewed as a critical link to connect Hoosiers with high-paying jobs in Chicago, creating a long-talked-about gateway to the Windy City. The president and CEO of the Northwest Indiana Regional Development Authority, Bill Hanna, is here now to explain how it can also address economic and population issues as well. And Bill, as always, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
This is big news. In your view, how big is this positive rating from the Federal Transit Administration, meaning you're in line for some big funding?
Well, this is critical. It's more than just another step. It's a threshold milestone that we had to get past. Basically, I was telling someone the other day, if you think about like qualifying for the Boston Marathon, it's hard to qualify, then you get there and you have to finish. Yeah. That's really what's happened. We've been qualified for funding, and now we have a couple of steps left to go through. But this is the gate. It was the pass-fail for the project, and it's the federal government saying this is a high-value project and it's worthy of moving forward.
Let's talk about the project in the South Shore, an 8-mile link extension between Dyer and Hammond would connect into the existing line. Talk about this piece of the project and why it's so critical.
It's critical. So for over 100 years, we've had the South Shore train. It's a single-line rail running into Chicago, and you've had over 500 miles of rail on the other side of the border and huge population growth. And so what we're doing here is we're adding a leg, about 8 miles. We're connecting to South Lake County. We're seeing population overflow from Illinois into our area, but now it's become positive too. People looking for the nice school systems that we have, the low taxes and so forth. So this is an amenity that really connects us to the third largest economy in Chicago. It turns the South Shore train from a train into a commuter system for job access.
Okay, so this is a two-edged sword there. You talk about jobs, so this would connect to what typically are higher paying jobs or high paying jobs, certainly in Chicago, in the Chicagoland area. And then on the flip side, the potential to attract residents in Chicagoland or in Illinois to come over and actually live in Indiana.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think a lot about New Jersey or Northern Virginia as examples where, you know, there was a day, I remember being a kid, and you talk about New Jersey as being separate from New York, and those days are over. Mm-hmm. And that's where we're heading. You know, it's the transportation connectivity, 40% higher wages in Chicago for the same job in Indiana, and the fact that there's as many jobs in the loop as there is in the entire state of Indiana makes this, as you said, a gateway for Hoosiers to Chicago, not just Northwest Indiana, but the entire state of Indiana.
And you talk about how this project has come together, this big, massive infrastructure project over the years with Mitch Daniels as governor and Eric Holcomb at the time as a key assistant, and Pete Visklosky in the role he has played at the federal level, and how those players are still, have really come full circle.
Yeah, it's really a testament to bipartisan leadership, and it says something about Indiana. We're focused on jobs first, way ahead of politics, and that's in contrast to a national scene. And Mitch Daniels was a key architect, a visionary, thought long-term about Northwest Indiana, sat in the same room with Pete Visklosky and Eric Holcomb at the time, as you said, on the staff. Now Indiana governor, Mike Pence signed the bill into law to fund it. And so you can see a progression in leadership and vision. And so we not only envision things here, we carry them out and get them done. And I think that says to the private sector, this is a safe place to do business. It's the right place to do business.
A landmark project. Let's talk about next steps. You've reached this major milestone. When could we actually see dirt being turned and maybe a completion date out there?
Yeah, well, that's really, the mark of success. So we talk about building the projects and so forth. The private money is a huge part. Property values for people, real people getting real jobs. And to that end, the first jobs will happen late summer 2020 when we start construction. So we're just right around the corner here, a little over a year. Really excited about it. People have talked about this for 30 years.
Wow.
And I will be very happy the day that I see the men and women of the trades and groups in Northwest Indiana breaking ground on this project.
And very, very quickly, potentially, when could we see, the track up and running?
2023 roughly. Okay. Taking people to and from work.
Very good. Bill Hanna, Northwest Indiana Regional Development Authority. Big news on the South Shore project with major funding news. And Bill, as always, thanks for being here. We'll continue to follow the story.
Thank you.
All right.
Still to come, Culture Matters features a tech consulting firm, and the INnovators spotlights forklift tech. But first, netlogx founder and CEO Audrey Taylor is a pioneer in Indy's tech sector. Her information technology and risk management firm just celebrated its 20th anniversary. She came in studio to talk about the company's past and future.
Congratulations, 20 years, that is an accomplishment. Well, I have to ask you, and I know you get asked this a fair amount. So 20 years ago, from the UK, you want to start this technology company. How in the heck did you pick Indianapolis and Indiana to start the company?
I think Indianapolis picked me. IT is an amazing career because it's a global career. There's no requalifications. There's no need to learn new languages. So I was going to travel the world one IT project at a time. The first questions out the gate was I don't speak any other languages. So I would come to the US and I was offered Houston, too hot. New York, I had some family there and I didn't want to go there, and Indianapolis. So I picked Indianapolis.
Start here, and the rest is history. And it's a great story, the growth story at netlogx. Give us, first of all, a thumbnail, just a quick business model, if you will, for what netlogx is all about.
So we're a consulting services company, which means we help organizations manage the change that's necessary to keep pace with the modern world. Change can be forced on you by legislative changes, by industry changes, by mergers, by separations, by acquisitions. But what we do is work with an organization to ensure that that change delivers value to them. So we come on, we work alongside your team, we move you from where you are to where you want to be, and then we leave you in a better place. Hopefully then you call us back.
That's right, and your customer base, do you have a typical customer, or is it all over the board?
So the standard answer is we're about 60% public sector. So the public sector does an awful lot of transition forced on them by government changes. So we work in multiple states and help them with their transformations. And then the rest of it is the 40% in the private sector. So there's nothing unique in our consultants between working in those two verticals. Generally speaking, we hire interested people who like to ask complex questions. So they work across all of our fields. I
know, as we were talking off camera, culture is a big part of your company, and you have served as a mentor, a role model for women in tech, women in high tech, I think, president at one point. Why is that important? And that diversity and inclusion piece, which you've really put an emphasis on at netlogx.
So I've always been, back in the day I was a programmer before they were called coders, and it's always been a male-heavy environment that I've worked in. I'm perfectly comfortable in that environment because that's just the shape my world's always been. But I think it's important that we produce better results if we're more diverse and inclusive. So to me, it's about encouraging other women. I think it's an amazing career. It has flexibility, it has challenges. I think it's worked for me in my life. So I believe it's a good career. So I'm just trying to encourage other people to follow my path.
Do you sense those opportunities for women, as you look here in Indianapolis, in IT, are getting better? Thanks to your efforts and others, I think they are. But overall, how do you think the landscape is for women in tech?
So I think that's very kind of you. I think the reality is there is an amazing talent shortage. And if you rule out 50% of the population, you're not going to fill the hopper. So I think we're all being more intentional about where we're going to find our next set of tech talent from. And I think it's an amazing time for women to step up and step into this career. And there are lots and lots of people, including myself, who are willing to help you and have those conversations and share what it's like.
Very good. Congratulations, Audrey Taylor, the founder and CEO at netlogx. 20 years in business and growing. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right.
Later in the podcast, the INnovators with Dr. K, and a startup focuses on a new option in corn. But now, Indianapolis-based technology solutions company Moser Consulting has grown from one employee to more than 200 over the last 2 decades. The company is the subject of this month's Culture Matters segment with first-person Executive Vice President Paul Ashley.
Another success story here, Moser Consulting, as I mentioned there, started in 1996 with just one employee, and they have grown nicely. An IT consulting firm, right?
IT consultancy, many different practice areas in that area. They've grown to 200 employees and have the headquarters here in Indy and a growing office in Baltimore, about 50 employees there. So it's a real success story. They like to say they're a Google-like culture right here in the Silicon Prairie.
Interesting,
which is cool.
And well, we want to talk about that culture in a minute, but I think part of the culture and one of the interesting pieces is their new headquarters. They were spread out over several locations. Chose a location that people who've been in Indianapolis for a while probably remember in the Castleton area. I think it was the Wharf and any number of restaurants you could see from 465, but you could never figure out how to get there.
That's right.
The restaurants never made it, but it's turned into what's been a nice headquarters.
Yeah, it's great for them because it's been allowed to put them all under one roof. The people that are here, just like the people in Baltimore, are under one roof, and they were spread over multiple locations. It also creates visibility to the brand. Hundreds of thousands of cars on 465. Nobody needs to get there, though, and so it's a perfect location. And being under one roof, designing that space in a purposeful way has created intentional collaboration and more opportunity for folks who are often out as consultants to come back together to home base.
Being intentional, let's talk about some of the keys as you see them for success at Moser. One of them we talked about off camera is transparency.
Yeah, transparency, and I think it's interesting for business leaders to think about how to be appropriately transparent, and that's something that the market demands now, the employee marketplace demands. And I think Ty, who's the founder, Ty Moser, is incredibly humble, as is the rest of his leadership team, and they are willing to talk very openly, and they have a disciplined monthly meeting process where they talk about the financials of this business, they talk about the direction, they talk about new customer acquisition, and it brings everybody on the same page so people know what's happening in the business, and I think that matters. Secondarily, they have, since 2013, the first time they qualified for Best Place to Work, they've won every year. They've had you announce their name a few times. And they take that Best Place to Work data seriously. The senior team takes it in, analyzes it, and then comes up with a plan to improve every year they share with the staff. Culture,
important part of the culture too is colleague selection, hiring, that process.
Yeah, and so in an industry where the retention rate is about 35%, they see retention rates around 90%. Why? Lots of reasons, but one of them I point to is their colleague selection. They do a great job hiring, and their first interview, Gary, is about, is this person a culture fit? They don't even get into technical capabilities.
Interesting, yeah.
They start with, can they fit in our culture? And that's different.
Only have 20 seconds left, but a lot of perks, a lot of cool perks, right?
Tons of cool perks. In-house gym. They've got a patio outside that they can enjoy in the warmer months. Right now, we're not doing it. And they host hosted lunches 3 days a week and have tons of opportunities for them to collaborate together. It's great.
Interesting story, a great Culture Matters segment in Moser Consulting here in Indianapolis. Paul Ashley from First Person. Thanks as always. We'll talk to you soon.
It's a pleasure.
All right.
Remember, you can catch Inside Indiana Business Television on stations throughout the state every weekend. Head to InsideIndianaBusiness.com to check listings. Still to come, we introduce you to Orange Corn, and a new campaign honors a late Butler basketball star. But first, Quarion Technology is an Evansville-based business that develops tracking and control technology for forklift equipment. The company says its tech can eliminate accidents, injuries, and property damage. President Arik Pryor was a guest on the INnovators with Dr. K.
Another success story here, Moser Consulting, as I mentioned there, started in 1996 with just one employee, and they have grown nicely. An IT consulting firm, right?
IT consultancy, many different practice areas in that area. They've grown to 200 employees and have the headquarters here in Indy and a growing office in Baltimore, about 50 employees there. So it's a real success story. They like to say they're a Google-like culture right here in the Silicon Prairie.
Interesting,
which is cool.
And well, we want to talk about that culture in a minute, but I think part of the culture and one of the interesting pieces is their new headquarters. They were spread out over several locations. Chose a location that people who've been in Indianapolis for a while probably remember in the Castleton area. I think it was the Wharf and any number of restaurants you could see from 465, but you could never figure out how to get there.
That's right.
The restaurants never made it, but it's turned into what's been a nice headquarters for them.
It's great for them because it's been allowed to put them all under one roof. The people that are here, just like the people in Baltimore, are under one roof, and they were spread over multiple locations. It also creates visibility to the brand. Hundreds of thousands of cars on 465. Nobody needs to get there though, and so it's a perfect location. And being under one roof, designing that space in a purposeful way, has created intentional collaboration and more opportunity for folks who are often out as consultants to come back together to home base.
Being intentional, let's talk about some of the keys as you see them for success at Moser. One of them we talked about off camera is transparency.
Yeah, transparency, and I think it's interesting for business leaders to think about how to be appropriately transparent, and that's something that the market demands now, the employee marketplace demands. And I think Ty, who's the founder, Ty Moser, is incredibly humble, as is the rest of his leadership team, and they are willing to talk very openly, and they have a disciplined monthly meeting process where they talk about the financials of this business, they talk about the direction, they talk about new customer acquisition, and it brings everybody on the same page so people know what's happening in the business, and I think that matters. Secondarily, they have since 2013, the first time they qualified for Best Place to Work. They've won every year. They've had you announce their name a few times, and they take that Best Place to Work data seriously. The senior team takes it in, analyzes it, and then comes up with a plan to improve every year they share with the staff.
Culture, important part of the culture too is colleague selection, hiring, that process.
Yeah, and so in an industry where the retention rate is about 35%, they see retention rates around 90. Why? Lots of reasons, but one of them I point to is their colleague selection. They do a great job hiring, and their first interview, Gary, is about, is this person a culture fit? They don't even get into technical capabilities.
Interesting, yeah.
They start with, can they fit in our culture? And that's different.
Only have 20 seconds left, but a lot of perks, a lot of cool perks, right?
Tons of cool perks. In-house gym. They've got a patio outside that they can enjoy in the warmer months. Right now, we're not doing it. And they host hosted lunches 3 days a week and have tons of opportunities for them to collaborate together. It's great.
Interesting story, a great Culture Matters segment in Moser Consulting here in Indianapolis. Paul Ashley from First Person. Thanks as always. We'll talk to you soon.
It's a pleasure.
All right.
Later in the podcast, the Be the Change campaign honors a Butler hero and a look at Lilly's latest tax abatement request. But now, Hoosiers know a lot about corn. The typical options are yellow and white. But a startup with roots at Purdue University is launching orange corn in the U.S., and it's already on the menu in about half a dozen Indiana restaurants. Nutrimay's Chief Executive Officer Evan Rochford joined Kylie Valletta in the business of health.
So you are a professor, the son, kind of running the business side of things. So tell us first, what makes your corn more nutritious?
Yeah, so the dark orange color of our corn comes from significantly increased levels of carotenoids, which these are the same kind of natural antioxidant pigments that make carrots orange and also give them their well-known health benefits.
And you have an interesting story. Tell us how you got your start in Africa before you began selling in the U.S. market.
Yeah, and so Torbert, my father, has been working on orange corn for over 20 years. He's participated in a biofortification effort called Harvest Plus. And so the idea is to naturally increase the nutrient content of foods people are already consuming to deliver vitamins or minerals they're deficient in. And so in Africa, they have vitamin A deficiencies and they eat a lot of white corn. So the idea is to get them to eat orange corn instead, and so they can get beta carotene through the corn.
And this also is good for American health, though, so it crossed the pond, so they say. Restaurants in West Lafayette, also in Indy, are already using it. Tell us what they're creating, how they're using it.
Yeah, and so we've got a number of people using it as a polenta, like Pizzology in Carmel, Bistro 501 in Lafayette. We also have people using it more as a traditional grit, Upland College Ave here in Indy, as well as Nami's, which just opened up in Lafayette. And I think What I'm really excited about is the unique flavor and texture characteristics of our corn really make it a great platform for innovation. And so me and Chef Natalie up at Rise came up with the concept we call a grittata, which is basically a vegan frittata that uses grits instead of eggs. And so that will be going on their menu when they open their second location.
So it's kind of like a blank canvas.
Yeah, I think it brings a lot more to the table than a traditional just white or yellow corn would, and so it makes a really great platform for doing new and interesting things that a white or yellow might not shine in as much.
So if people want to get creative at home, tell us what you're selling and how people can get their hands on it.
Yeah, so right now we have 2-pound bags, retail bags of grits available on Amazon. So the best way to find those are to go to our website, professortorberts.com, and there's a link directly to the page there. Or if there's chefs that are interested, we can set up a wholesale account if they reach out to us through the website as well.
So can you tell us about any future products that you're working on or what plans you have for down the road?
Yeah, so we'll be launching a cornmeal cornmeal here shortly. And longer term, we're really interested in partnering with other food companies as an ingredient supplier to get this to as many people as possible. So things like tortilla chips, snack foods, cereals, and we're already generating some really good interest, and so we're excited about that.
Very good. So from beginning to end, one thing I like about this is homegrown in Indiana.
That's right. We work with a family farmer over near Rushville, and it's milled right here in Indiana, so it's 100% Hoosier.
And you mentioned the cornmeal. What kinds of things could you create out of the cornmeal?
Yeah, so the cornmeal, it creates a really beautiful golden brown sort of corn muffin, and so people have described it as having sort of the corn as having a nutty, buttery flavor sort of on its own, and so you don't need to put as much dairy or anything in there.
Right, and that's important for a lot of people. What are you most excited about looking forward?
I think that what's exciting is that we have the opportunity to do something similar to what's going on in Africa here in the United States. And so we don't have vitamin A deficiencies here, but most Americans could benefit from getting more carotenoids that have been associated with maintaining eye health. And so by getting those into foods people are already consuming, I think there's a really great opportunity to promote healthier diets.
And at a food expo this weekend, so good luck with that. Hope it produces some more good things for you.
All right.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Still to come, is Lilly's latest tax abatement request good for business? But first, Gorman & Bunch Orthodontics in Indianapolis has launched the Be the Change campaign to support Project 44, an Indy-based nonprofit created in honor of the late Butler basketball star Andrew Smith. Reporter Mary Rachel Redman has more.
Former Butler Bulldog star Andrew Smith was literally larger than life. Clocking in at just under 7 feet tall, the former Bulldog center helped lead Butler to improbable back-to-back national title appearances in 2010 and 2011. But perhaps it's Smith's off-the-court battle with cancer that he lost in 2016 that continues to make the biggest impact on the lives of others, due in large part to his widow Samantha Smith, who helped co-found Project 44, a nonprofit created to get more people to join the National Bone Marrow Registry. And it was Samantha's message at one Central Indiana orthodontic event that inspired Gorman & Bunch Orthodontics to help bring awareness to Project 44 with a campaign of their own, Be the Change.
She was our opening speaker, and she had the entire room crying by the time she finished, but it was a true story. It had a lot of passion, and we said, hey, let's see if we can be a platform for Project 44 and for Sam, and see if we can help her out in getting more applicants on the registry. We started digging into the details, and we found out 1 in 430 people are a match. And so our goals shifted a little bit, and we said we have March Madness, we have Project 44, let's help Sam out.
They really have embraced us and our mission and values. They've trained their staff, they're actively recruiting patients in office. It's really unparalleled when we have a partner like Gorman & Bunch come forward and do what they're doing for us. It's through those types of partnerships that we see the culture starting to change, with the idea that if we get in this together, then we can really make a difference, we can save lives.
If we can make one match, all the efforts are totally worth it. I want Andrew Smith, his name, to live on. I want Project 44 and what Sam's created to have more awareness, to bring awareness to cancer, what the bone marrow registry really does, and get people onto that registry so that as humans on this earth that's spinning around, we can truly make a difference in people's lives.
Mary Rachel Redman, Inside Indiana Business.
And finally this week, Eli Lilly has received final approval for property tax abatement on a $90 million investment it's making at its technology center in downtown Indianapolis. But critics are wondering whether those incentives are good public policy. KSM Location Advisor CEO Tim Cook and President Katie Culp take a look in our ION Economic Development segment.
It was made a fair amount of news this week. Eli Lilly and Company's major investment in insulin production in downtown Indianapolis, $90 million investment. I think the abatement request was for about $10 million. There were some on council and others who opposed that, which I think raised some eyebrows because you look at Lilly and Lilly's commitment to Indianapolis and those types of things. Talk about this particular proposal and your perspectives on that abatement request.
Well, I would think you agree with me.
in my mind, it was totally appropriate to support our largest employer and this huge corporate asset to our community with this type of investment. I understand some of the criticisms about it. There wasn't a lot of job creation, that type of thing, but I don't think Lilly is someone we start asserting our muscle in terms of close scrutiny.
And was that the kind of the rub for a lot of people? I don't know, or very few jobs. It certainly keeps jobs in Indianapolis and is a big investment in downtown, but the jobs were not a big factor.
Yeah, typically when you have tax abatement being offered, it's a company committing to offer new jobs, and in this case, it was a job retention. But to Katie's point, Lilly has been downtown forever. They've committed to being here. They've committed not to selling the company. They're a company that if they say tax abatement's part of this decision, I think you have to give them the benefit of the doubt.
And Lilly, a company obviously that can make investment any place they want to make it.
Anywhere in the world.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, exactly. Well, let's talk about tax abatement more broadly, because it's something we hear about a lot in economic development circles. It's a big part of the incentive game. Give us the kind of the ABCs, Katie, and Tim jump in there too, but on tax abatement, what it's really all about.
Well, I really hate the name tax abatement because it's a misnomer. It makes it sound like there's some sort of tax holiday and no taxes being paid, when in reality, even with like a 10-year property tax abatement, the company's paying taxes on land, on equipment, and some taxes on the building. So in a 10-year traditional cycle, you save about 50% of the property taxes you'd otherwise pay. And so it's a way of kind of easing in the burden of local taxes to new and expanding employers.
And everybody, or many states and municipalities use this, right? And some more aggressive maybe than what's seen here in Indiana.
Yeah, I mean, Indiana's not the only state that offers tax abatement. Most states do. Even if you look at some of our counterparts, Ohio has a much more aggressive tax abatement structure than Indiana does. So it's not as though it's used unreasonably here, and I think there's a lot of controls on it. It's something that has to go through a vote through a local council. It's not something that just someone can sign at their desk and offer it to them. So there are a lot of controls already in place.
As you look at the list of things, if I'm a company wanting to expand or to relocate, where does tax abatement fall? How important a tool is tax abatement in the economic development game?
Katie and I always talk about incentives. They are never going to be the reason a company locates someplace, but they can be a tiebreaker, and they can certainly, one thing that we talk about a lot of times, and this is true with the Lilly deal, this abatement might not influence this decision, but they will remember it the next time they're looking to make an investment in that community. And so I think you have to look at the long play with some of these projects, and if we offer abatement this time, will that make the company more likely to continue to invest at that location?
And tax abatement in this case, we're talking about a big company in Indianapolis, but abatement is an issue, especially when we talk about property tax caps and the issues that folks around the state are facing. This is becoming, I assume, a bigger, the issue is not going away.
Oh, it's getting a lot of scrutiny, especially from county government, because with the property tax caps, local government is really strapped for cash in some instances, and property tax abatement can take pieces of that away. But, the counter argument is you wouldn't get any of that tax that tax revenue if you weren't incentivizing that type of investment to begin with. But any of our 92 counties, I can guarantee you there are ongoing, sometimes heated discussions about how to appropriately use that tool.
Well, one thing that we talk about is, the questions on Lilly, those were good questions. They should be asked. Any kind of incentive request should be scrutinized, but to just have a one-size-fits-all criticism of all deals, that's really not the best interest of good policy.
Very good. Great discussion. Interesting topic, tax abatement for Lilly and more broadly for the rest of the state of Indiana. Tim Cook, Katie Culp, thanks as always. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Gary.
All right.
That wraps up this week's Inside Indiana Business Television podcast. Remember, you can find all of this week's TV segments, as well as the top business news from throughout the state at InsideIndianaBusiness.com. While you're there, you can also subscribe to our platform of free e-newsletters. This is Andy Ober for Inside Indiana Business.